Chapter 12 is called Lavender. Lavender, as we know, is Matilda's new friend. They like each other very much because they're both feisty and rebellious. We have also just witnessed Miss Trunchbull be a complete terror once again with Bruce, but Bruce having had the upper hand in managing to win the challenge of eating an entire cake. And so the humiliation that Miss Trunchbull hoped to get over him didn't quite work out for her. Let us see what happens in this chapter. In the first week of school, Miss Honey calls upon all the class to listen to her very, very carefully and to pay attention. She announces that Miss Trunchbull regularly, once a week, goes and visits each class for one lesson and tests them, basically, upon what they've learned. Now, let's go to this passage. "A word of warning to you all," Miss Honey said. "The headmistress is very strict about everything. Make sure your clothes are clean, your faces are clean, and your hands are clean. Speak only when spoken to. When she asks you a question, stand up at once before you answer it. Never argue with her. Never answer back. Never try to be funny. If you do, you will make her angry. And when the headmistress gets angry, you had better watch out." In typical Miss Honey style, she is caring and doting in terms of her children. Now, her pupils obviously have seen what Miss Trunchbull is like, so it's no news to them that Miss Trunchbull is there to get them. She essentially is prepared and dying to catch them doing something wrong. Through all of the insults that and her expressions of disliking children, that is one thing that we're pretty clear upon. Miss Honey, in warning them, in telling them, be prepared for this, do that, make sure your hands are clean, make sure you don't answer back, and all of this, it just shows the difference in terms of power, how you can influence children in terms of good and bad in comparison to Miss Trunchbull. And although she is trying to prepare them to do everything to protect them against Miss Trunchbull, at the same time, she feels that it is very clear that she can only do so much in terms of interceding where if Miss Trunchbull happens to get angry. So she doesn't seem to think she can get in and intrude in any interaction between the children and Miss Trunchbull. She also shows that above all, you must avoid provoking Miss Trunchbull. You must accept the abuse if it happens, which is, of course, regrettable. Miss Honey also tells them to review their 2 times table and any spellings that they might have learnt in the last few days, because Miss Trunchbull will be testing them on these things. She absolutely doesn't want them to get into trouble with her. She also explains that they will need to have a jug of water and a glass of water for her, and Lavender puts up her hand and volunteers that she will go and pick it up and she won't forget at all costs. Having promised this, something ignites in Lavender. Let's go to this passage. Already, Lavender's scheming mind was going over the possibilities that this water jug job had opened up for her. She longed to do something truly heroic. She admired the older girl Hortensia to distraction for the daring deeds she had performed in the school. She also admired Matilda, who had sworn her to secrecy about the parrot job she had brought off at home, and also the great hair oil switch, which had bleached her father's hair. It was her turn now to become a heroine, if only she could come up with a brilliant plot. The theme of fighting injustice is tremendous over here. So we go back to Hortensia, the 10-year-old, and her stories when she was relating them to Lavender and Matilda, obviously have had huge impact, at least on the little kids. She's done a fantastic job in making the notion of punishing Miss Trunchbull a great achievement and almost actually heroic in nature. Also, it is about being cool. Let's say it's this idea of social currency. Hortensia, through her actions, is looked up at by the rest of the kids, and of course, Lavender might want a part of the action in doing that, in putting off one of these tricks, and that again is children wanting power in within a certain environment. Now, Lavender herself is, as she puts it, as it's put, is admires Hortensia to distraction. That means absolutely she's completely overwhelmed by this girl and wants to be part of this little movement where Miss Trunchbull is being attacked and put in her place. Miss Trunchbull is evil, and so they are seen as a force of good acting against her. She also wants this taste of power, and also, especially after we've seen what happened with Bruce accepting and beating the challenge put to him. It was a resounding success, not just for him, but for the entire audience who were watching. They were all satisfied. They were all overly satisfied and celebratory about the fact that he managed to beat Miss Trunchbull with this challenge. Matilda's impact here is also mentioned. Matilda has now confided in Lavender. They're good friends, clearly, and she's told her all about her little tricks that she's pulled on her own parents, both about the parrot and about the bleach. And Matilda has shared this with Lavender and promised her to keep it absolutely secret. She's not allowed to tell this to anybody else. And again, there is this feeling of plotting and revolutionary kind of gang in action. What Matilda, in sharing her little tricks, does for Lavender is also bring it to Lavender in terms of accessibility. So Lavender is inspired by Hortensia, but of course, Hortensia's much older than she is. She's a 10-year-old girl. But Matilda, in sharing her exploits, brings this closer to Lavender, and to Lavender, it seems like she might actually be able to take on one of these challenges herself. If Matilda has managed, why shouldn't she? And so she makes this rebellion accessible to both her young age and her small size. The next passage we're going to look at carries on straight from the previous one. On the way home from school that afternoon, she began to mull over the various possibilities, and when at last the germ of a brilliant idea hit her, she began to expand on it and lay her plans with the same kind of care the Duke of Wellington had done before the Battle of Waterloo. Admittedly, the enemy on this occasion was not Napoleon, but you would never have got anyone at Cronsham Hall to admit that the headmistress was a less formidable foe than the famous Frenchman. Great skill would have to be exercised, Lavender told herself, and great secrecy observed if she was come out of this exploit alive. A couple of things in the vocabulary. So one is a germ of a brilliant idea, which means the very initial thoughts that would develop into a brilliant idea. And the word foe is another word for enemy. There's an expression, friend or foe, like, are you a friend or an enemy? That is how it's sometimes used as well. In the descriptions where the children are playing pranks or plotting. Like here, Lavender is plotting to play a prank on Miss Trunchbull. Roald Dahl uses these great metaphors of war. And what he does in doing so is that he elevates these little tricks to a much grander position. So he is basically making these pranks significant and heroic, in fact. So over here, we have that Lavender lay her plans with the same kind of care the Duke of Wellington had done before the Battle of Waterloo. Now, the Duke of Wellington is one of the most important historic figures in English history. And the Battle of Waterloo is, of course, where Napoleon was defeated, and it marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars. So as Lavender plots out what she's going to do to put to get back at Miss Trunchbull, we have this comparison with this great battle. And even then, the headmistress, Miss Trunchbull, may not be this, as they put it, this famous Frenchman, but she is in all intents, when it comes back to the school and the context that we have, just as significant, just as terrifying, basically, and valid in terms of an enemy that they need to destroy and at all costs come up against. The chapter lets us follow Lavender very, very closely. And in so doing, we take part in all of the process of Lavender thinking about what she's going to do, and then Lavender thinking up the plan with the newt, and then Lavender going and catching the newt and how she does it and how she thinks about the newt and how it feels and how it looks and how it behaves. And also Lavender then gets to school when she should be pulling off the trick, and we know that she is also very anxious about this endeavor. And it is, in fact, quite a big deal if you think about it. She's a very small girl, and she's going to pull off this really very naughty trick. So she can't eat, and with all the anxiety and nervousness and expectation of what's going to happen. There's a lot of war metaphors in all of these descriptions, which continues from what we were saying in the paragraph before. So amongst them, we see that Lavender carried her secret weapon to school, and then she was longing to tell Matilda about her plan of battle. She wanted to share this with her friend, but however, she's valiant and courageous and brave, and she thinks about the cause and she thinks about the outcome, and it's very responsible, and which makes you think about this battle against Miss Trunchbull is extremely important to these children. It says, it was better that way because then no one, even when put under the most severe torture, would be able to name her as the culprit. So Lavender's saying, I am not going to share this with anyone, because if they were to torture that person, then that person wouldn't be able to give up my name. And these are all very serious things that happen in actual wars. And to an extent, you could almost imagine Miss Trunchbull actually torturing someone to get a name to be able to punish a little child. So let's go to the passage now. It's after lunch. Lavender's unable to eat, and she's picked up the jug, and she's about to let the newt in before the classroom is filled. Quick as a flash, Lavender got her pencil box from her satchel and slid open the lid just a tiny bit. The newt was lying quite still. With great care, she held the box over the neck of the jug and pulled the lid fully open and tipped the newt in. There was a plop as it landed in the water. Then it thrashed around wildly for a few seconds before settling down. And now, to make the newt feel more at home, Lavender decided to give it all the pondweed from the pencil box as well. The deed was done. Following Lavender and describing all again the little bits of the plan being executed takes the reader along the journey and the excitement that Lavender's going through in order to punish Miss Trunchbull. And it also builds tension and it creates a sense of expectation. Now that we can visualize, that can see this slimy little creature with all the pond weeds inside the jug, we can only, as readers, imagine that moment when Miss Trunchbull is bound to, in good storytelling style, come across this little squirmy thing, and we want to see what will happen to Miss Trunchbull, what her reaction will be. And so we are, as readers, this lets us in on the joke. We feel a part of the action, and we also are part of this mission to torment Miss Trunchbull and enjoying it quite a bit.